Bro, luxury watches are a scam. Why do you say that? Dude, I can get the same watch online for like a tenth the price. So what you're telling me is brand doesn't matter to you. They're all made in China anyway. Okay, but have you actually put them on side by side? Whatever. So this is a perpetual argument on the internet. What's the difference between a $500 watch and a $9,000 watch? Well, we intend to find that out today. Luckily, we've got 3 Navitimers. One is the legend itself and is synonymous with the advent of the jet age, perhaps the most iconic look outside of the Speedmaster or the Submariner. And the other 2 are near identical homages to it. One thing to note, I'm gonna skip digital watches in this video since I doubt someone is cross-shopping a G-Shock to a Navitimer, and if you are, you can let us know in the comments. But even though your Casio AE 1200 can tell me what time it is right now in Mogadishu, I don't think that's here nor there for the purpose of this video. Sponsoring today's video is IFL Watches, our renowned customizer of our favorite models. They are dropping a limited edition today that is based on the titanium Citizen Sinn and features a koi fish motif on the dial. It's got this black iridescent sunburst finish on which hand-painted koi fish are swimming around. And one cool Easter egg that I discovered while filming this watch was that at the 4 o'clock subdial is actually a lily pad upon which the sub-second hand rotates. When I reviewed the Citizen Sinn, I noted how well the titanium watch was finished and how well executed the bracelet was with nice polishing and brushing, making this a great base for the art that you see. And you can even see the automatic movement through the case back. Now, if you're interested in this limited edition, they usually go pretty fast. I'll leave a link in the description. Thanks IFL for sponsoring today's video. Now back to our comparison with our first watch, the budget Navitimer. Citizen's take on this iconic look is called the Promaster Navihawk, and right out of the box, she's a looker. The navy blue color contrasts well with the yellow accents, and those happen to be the color scheme of the Navy Blue Angels, an elite flight demonstration squadron that flies their F-18s way too close together, impressing humans and scaring our pets. Citizen has apparently had a 3-decade-long relationship with the Blue Angels, and this is their latest collab. The 40mm Navihawk is one of a pair of offerings with the bigger 46mm Skyhawk, also available in similar livery. One word of caution, this on paper is a 40mm watch across, but the case itself is recessed away from that wide bezel and measures more of a 38.5, so it wears smaller than stated. And this one is good for the skinny wrists, but if you're a bigger boy, I'd recommend you look at the bigger model. One look at this dial, you see a heavy Navitimer influence. The bezel is anodized blue with yellow marking at the 12 to orient the wearer. Inboard of that, we find a yellow chapter ring on which is printed words like fuel, kilometers, liters, and other sort of pilot words. Subdials are classically laid out at the 3, 6, and 9. Big leaf hands and polished markers finish out the ensemble. It's a busy dial as expected, but in kind of a professional, functional gauge cluster kind of way. Look closer, you'll see the Blue Angels insignia marked under the 9 o'clock subdial as well as displayed on the caseback. So what makes this really stellar looking watch less than $600? Well, a couple things. First, always look at the bracelet. Cheaper watches will spend most of their money on the watch head, and they tend to run out of resources when it comes to the bracelet. Now, there's nothing wrong with the Navihawk's bracelet. It's got president-style links that feel relatively sturdy, but they use a pin and collar system, which is kind of a pain to adjust. The clasp is also a piece of stamped steel, and there's just one adjustment hole, though I was able to get a pretty good fit. So the Navihawk is priced at $595, but a big reason why this is sub $1,000 is the movement. It runs a quartz unit called the Eco Drive from Citizen. Now, I don't want you guys to think that I'm a quartz hater or anything. There's definitely a place for them on this end of the price spectrum. And quartz has its own perks. You don't need to reset the time when you pick up the watch. And what's special about the Eco Drive is they've embedded a solar panel underneath the dial, so it doesn't require a battery change as long as you leave the house once in a while. Quartz movements are also going to be more accurate and typically maintenance free for decades. One issue though, even though it uses a small quartz movement, it's still a beefy 13.5 millimeters thick, which does detract from its form factor a little bit. But, and this is a big but, for many of us, the whole idea of a luxury watch is about craftsmanship. And part of the craftsmanship is having a mechanical movement inside. And that leads us to our next Navitimer. For some people, a quartz watch just doesn't cut it. Knowing that there are hundreds of little gears and springs working in concert to tell the time, and seeing the sweeping of the second hand, and knowing that maybe old men in monocles toiled over your watch is what that luxury watch life is all about. And if you fall in that category, let me introduce you to the Sinn navigational chronograph. Your eyes are not fooling you. The Sinn 903 has an identical dial to the real McCoy, but this isn't an homage watch to the Breitling Navitimer. The story goes, during the hard times in the 70s, at the height of the quartz crisis, when like 2/3 of Swiss watch brands went out of business, Breitling did not go unscathed. They were flying high in the 60s with watches like the Chronomat and the Navitimer, but they fell on hard times during the quartz crisis. And in an effort to salvage the company, they sold the patents to the aesthetics of the Navitimer to two companies, one of whom was the German manufacturer Sinn. And this is really on brand for Sinn, having been founded by a World War II pilot. And that's why Sinn is allowed to produce this watch in this form to this day. But Sinn wasn't content on just copying the look. In this version of the 903, which was updated in 2023, they made a few subtle changes in an effort to produce a better watch. We still get that beautiful sunburst blue dial, but now we get an applied logo. We get Lumicast blocks for the hour markers, emitting stronger luminescence. The watch is fitted with a screw-down crown, affording a full 200 meters of water resistance, which is quite a feat for a pilot's watch. But what they didn't change is that classic tri-compacts recipe. The case here is finished better than the Citizen, the polishing is cleaner, the bezel turns smoother in the hand, and the bracelet with its slanted links alternating between polished and brushed pieces have a lot more thought put into them, and it closes on a butterfly deployant that hides the mechanism, which allows this bracelet to flow around your wrist. Now let's talk about the Sinn's movement. It's got its pluses and minuses. See, Sinn got the rights to the watch, but they needed to supply their own movement. And at the sort of $2,000 to $4,000 price range, pretty much your go-to mechanical option would be a Valjoux derivative. The Valjoux 7750 was the chronograph movement that democratized chronographs to the people. And if you're a manufacturer and don't own an in-house movement factory, this was adopted by pretty much everyone up and down the industry. Even today, many versions of this Valjoux can be found produced by the likes of Sellita, ETA. But with the updated 903, Sinn actually swapped the cam-operated system of the Valjoux with the column wheel. This is kind of a big deal if you're into movements, because column wheel engagement is said to be smoother and avoids that jumping chrono hand at the start, which sometimes you can see with cam-operated systems. Now, how much you're going to notice this day to day is debatable, but it's definitely a bit of a flex. But what the Sinn couldn't fix is the size of the Valjoux. This is a thick boy, measuring at a full 14.5 millimeters. What that means, unfortunately, is this watch looks amazing in pictures, but when worn, at least I find it to be a bit heavy and clumsy. I have a 6.5-inch wrist, so bigger wristed people, your mileage might vary. I've been able to get away with it though on a zero pass strap because it doesn't add more depth to the watch. This no time to die colorway, I feel like really picks up on the colors of the dial, but you still can't get around the fact that this is 41 by 14.5 in a case that doesn't quite hide its thickness very well. Well, here she is, the real deal Holyfield, the one that started it all, the Breitling Navitimer in 806 form. Well, actually, no, this is a remake of that fateful 1959 watch by Breitling, reproduced in 2019. Costing double what the Sinn costs, looking arguably no better. What are we paying for here? Well, putting it on the wrist, the first thing you'll notice is proportions. The case here is much thinner at 13 millimeters, and much of that height is due to the high domed acrylic crystal. You're wearing this watch and the watch is not wearing you. This 1959 re-edition is a faithful recreation of the vintage 806, which means it has the acrylic crystal and a snap-on case back with only 30 meters of water resistance. So this is much less of a go anywhere, do anything kind of watch. This is made for someone who wants the look of a vintage 806 down to the hand-painted imperfect lume on the dial, but modern guts inside. Because this watch runs the Breitling B09 movement, which is a manual wind version of the renowned B01, a column wheel vertical clutch machine that feels honestly a lot more precise on engagement compared to the Sinn. And there's something to be said about having Breitling on the dial, because before there were calculators, there was the slide rule. Now, Willie Breitling had the bright idea of circularizing that contraption and putting it onto a watch. He called that watch the chronomat, a chronograph for mathematicians. And the patent carried over to his next watch, the navigational timer, or Navitimer. Now, initially this watch was made only for professional pilots, but I think later it was made available to the public at the behest of the AOPA. And I feel like at an almost $10,000 price tag, what we're paying for partly is the story. This watch encapsulates 70 years of Navitimer history. It recalls the long history of the relationship between Breitling and the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, where you can still see the Wings logo printed at the 12. It recalls the story of the Navitimer Cosmonaut, the special edition worn by Scott Carpenter during his space mission in 1962. It recalls the fact that we have Breitling to thank for inventing the modern chronograph two-pusher layout, which we're still accustomed to today. So in many ways, part of what you're paying for are those intangible factors that we can't see or touch or even put a price on. So you tell me, which Navitimer is right for you? I know I'll be putting one of these watches up for sale on the Anachronist Discord. And so if you're curious on which one I ended up keeping, check out the invite in the description. All right, guys, talk to you next time.